Hi, this is our fourth series in safety instructions. And what we're going to try to do this year is have you go over all these videos before you come into lab so you can really see what the equipment looks like before you come in. In the prior instructions, which are probably the most important, I talked about chemical exposure and I spoke about fire, which are the biggies. We still have to talk about explosion, but today I want to talk a little bit about thermal burns and cuts, what you do. We have very, very simple approaches to things, and safety is simple. Okay, safety is wearing the right clothes, right? You're so sick of me saying this: goggles, apron, gloves, shoes that cover your feet, no flip-flops. And remember, if you wear your flip-flops, you're either going to be told to leave or you have to put baggies over your feet, which is not the most pleasant experience. So think about that. This is for you. We want you to be safe. Now, one of the things that you could acquire in the lab is a thermal burn. It's actually very, very rare. And I will tell you when it has occurred. It occurs when people pick up hot plates that are hot and unplugged. So my recommendation to you would be that any heating element, including the round heating elements you use for distillation, do not pick it up until you've given it adequate time to cool, and do not pick it up when you don't know anything about it. In other words, if you walked up to one of your friend's hoods and there's a hot plate sitting there and it's unplugged, don't pick it up. And the worst thing you can do, the only bad burn I've ever seen in our lab, thermal burn, was somebody picked up a hot plate like this. They picked it up from the top, right? So certainly never pick them up from the top. Now, the other place people get in a little bit of trouble is taking down stills that are hot. We do really accelerate things and we try to get you moving pretty fast in the lab, but really it's a good idea to wait 2 or 3 minutes to let your still cool down. And I'm going to run and grab something. Be right back. I'm glad you didn't follow me. I'm glad about that. So remember, you have these little grips, and you can always use these to pick things up. Never be, stoic or tough. You're going to pick up some hot thing. Don't do it. You will get burned. It's not a good idea. So you can pick these up with these if you want to. You're still, you can take it down with these grips. There's 2 in each hood. Be careful. The other thing to be careful of are the drying ovens, which are beneath your hood, okay? One thing I would recommend is always put your equipment on the top shelf because the bottom shelf is a lot hotter, okay? In fact, I'm going to show a drying oven just to be, you can come over. Okay, so in a typical station, right, you have a drying oven. I always tell students to get to know their drying oven the first week of lab, okay? The way you turn the drying oven on is you hit this button, and normally people have it set between 100 and 150, not much higher. I always tell people it would be really cool if we could bake cookies in that oven. We can't do that. It's a chemistry lab. But it's also not that hot. It's not as hot as your oven at home. But the idea here is you're not in the sink all the time scrubbing things and sticking paper towels in to dry as you might have done in general chemistry. In here, you clean your glassware, maybe rinse it with a little bit of acetone, and put it on the top shelf. Close the oven and let it dry, and it'll dry very rapidly. The bottom shelf, though, is problematic. You can dry things down there. It's a lot hotter. But if you put anything that has plastic on it, like a graduated cylinder, it's going to melt, okay? Also, do not store your equipment in the oven. A lot of people think the oven is a cabinet. It's not a cabinet, okay? So get to know that your first week and try to get in the habit of using it each week. Okay, now, last but not least, I want to talk a little bit about cuts. And I'm focusing on very, very specific areas. How are we for time?
4:30.
Okay, we'll make it. Cuts in the lab come from 3 things. I could probably come up with a bunch of scenarios, but my experience has been when people refuse to use a dustpan and brush to clean up when they have broken something. And we break things in here all the time. So if you break something, you want to use the dustpan and brush. And on the way out, I'll show you where the dustpan and brush is. You sweep it up and dump it And if you're really in a dismay as to what to do, ask for help. You know, everybody, I don't know what it is, it's some kind of weird psychological phenomenon, but when people break things, they're always like, oh, I'll just pick it up quickly and throw it out. You don't want to do that. You want to get the dustpan and brush, sweep it up. Remember, these things could have chemicals on them as well. And we have special containers for this broken glass. We do not want the broken glass in the garbage cans, because imagine if you were a cleaning person at Bryn Mawr College, you reached in and there was all kinds of broken glass in there. Okay, so there's a special place that has to go. The other place I've seen terrible injuries is when people are trying to take thermometers and stick them into a still head. And I just know someone who had an absolutely horrible injury from this. And what happened was, right, took the thermometer, was pushing it from the end, and what do you think happened? It snapped, and then when it snapped, there was so much force from her hand that she hit this part of her hand. And she, like, tore up muscle and tendons in this part of her hand, and it was a very serious injury. And I've seen people do this in other scenarios as well. So one of the things that's really important with glass is that when you have a thin tube and you're trying to put it through a tight opening, you should put some vacuum grease on the tip. You don't have to do this, but it's not a bad idea when you're a beginner. That'll make it slide right through. And then hold it close to the point of insertion and twist it, and you'll be able to get it in to the correct height without a lot of trouble and struggle and breaking things. We also use trap adapters in the lab, and these are pre-made, and they are really hard to make. I make them myself personally because they're dangerous to make. The problem with these is sometimes they get broken or they're chipped. Students want to move the tube. They like moving the tube, and I understand that, you know. Sometimes the tube is not where you want it to be. Do not move these tubes. These are in so tight, you can't move them. We used grease and heat and stuff to get them in here. You're not going to be able to get it out. And if you try to get it out, you could end up in the situation I described with the thermometer. Okay, so I'm going to show you where broken glass goes, and I'll show you where the safety kit is. Are we okay on time?
7:30.
Okay, almost done. Okay, so at every garbage can, there's dustpan and brush, okay? The broken glass goes into these containers and only these containers. And if you have any doubt, ask someone. The first aid kits are here and they're out in the hall. We really don't use anything in those first aid kits except Band-Aids. So if you, for example, cut your hand, which happens every once in a while, what you'd want to do is flush the cut for 15 minutes with cold water. That's really all the doctoring we do. And then you would want to take a piece of gauze out of that kit, and we would help you. Put it on your hand, make a fist, and hold it up to stop the bleeding. Then we would invariably go to the health center. Any injury has to be reported, and normally, unless it's extremely minor, you have to go to the health center. So you should really tell us. It's important to tell someone if you get injured. Okay, so that's it for safety for now.